This is Political Radar Pulse with Rhonda Sitnikow, where we explore the issues facing Northeast Wisconsin and beyond with insightful interviews and open discussions.
Hey, all you political junkies, welcome to Political Radar Pulse, the best 30 minutes of unscripted and uncensored political talk you will hear all day. The list of candidates for the Wisconsin governor's race in 2018 continues to grow. The man who said it's about time for a governor who will put people before politics joins me today. Andy Gronik, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rhonda. Good, great to be here.
I'm really excited to get to as much as we can in the 30 minutes that we have, but let's start with some background, your history. Why are you running?
Sure. I'm a lifetime Wisconsinite. My wife is as well. We have two young kids, a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old. And what's happening in Wisconsin right now is just not acceptable to me. I want the kind of future for my kids that I had here in the state. And too many families struggling, going after education. Now healthcare is at risk. There's a million reasons why it was time to stand up and to really try to get back to the kinds of progressive values that have always propelled the state of Wisconsin forward.
Was there an aha moment where you said, okay, I'm doing it?
Well, no, really just the way I've lived my life. I mean, as a person who has built a business from scratch, built it into an international company, there were many, many times in the course of that process where I asked myself, is this it? I mean, I knew that I was good at the job that I was doing. I knew I was providing good things for my employees and for my customers. And you get to a certain point in a professional career where you say, God, there's got to be more than this, because throughout my entire life, I've always tried to help people that I've come in contact with, done it very, very quietly, just because they needed the help, and that's who I am. But I sold my business in 2013, and when I continue to watch the dialogue, the conversation that's going on in our state, it's so unlike the Wisconsin that I grew up in. The fact that our governor came in, and the first thing he did was work to divide our state, and ultimately has made us perhaps the most dysfunctional state in the country as viewed by people around the nation. That's not who we are. We're a people who has always loved to debate. We're a state that loves to debate issues and ideas, but we're also a state that loves to move forward and get something done. That's not happening in our state, and as a result, there's too many things that we need to be doing that are important to our families.
I will ask you about that. So you mentioned dysfunction. So do you believe the dysfunction that's happening in the state of Wisconsin is the reason why so many residents have left the state? Because it is a fact that more people are leaving Green Bay and other surrounding areas of the state of Wisconsin to go other places for business, for just for quality of life. I'm not sure why, but they are leaving. And you had mentioned at some point, I had read somewhere that that's a concern for you. How do we keep business in Wisconsin? How do we keep people wanting to choose to live in Wisconsin?
Well, jobs, let's just begin there. Jobs and education, I think, are hand in glove. But so many families have lost good-paying jobs and have replaced those jobs with jobs that are working 2 or 3 jobs and still worrying whether or not they can actually get by. Can I get to the end of the week? Can I pay my rent? What if this is a week where I have to buy gas and groceries? It's that close for so many families. And so they're leaving to find opportunities elsewhere. If you look at the trend with young people leaving our state, it's even more staggering. If young people are leaving the state of Wisconsin and old people are getting older, and our costs, if you look outward, are going up, and our revenues are going down, those are not good trends. I don't have to be a PhD in economics to say we need to find a way to turn that around. So getting back to some core things that Wisconsin has always been about, good jobs, good education, are absolutely critical. I spent the last 18 months traveling the state, talking to hundreds of people about jobs and education, about the kinds of outside-the-box ideas that will help to build on Wisconsin's strengths and bring those jobs back, bring people back to our rural communities, and get Wisconsin back on track.
Can we mention that? Because I was following those conversations, and it was done, that was done really well. Stage W. Can you talk about what that was?
Sure. I mean, part of my 18-month journey included starting Stage W, which was a nonprofit. And the intent there was to give the people of Wisconsin back their voice, to give them the stage, to actually start a productive conversation about the kinds of things that we can be doing and we should be doing to get back to the Wisconsin that I grew up in, that you grew up in, that everybody did. It's about being able to begin at that starting place of honesty and then build upon it. We can do that again.
What do you think in regards to, and you had mentioned business and retaining business in Wisconsin, what is it going to take? We've looked at what Scott Walker has done for the past few years, where he's given so many corporations really, pretty large tax breaks, and then they end up still closing or moving. Workers lose jobs. The company leaves the state. What is it going to take to keep good paying, decent, living wage jobs in Wisconsin?
Well, Governor Walker doesn't have a good track record of creating good jobs. Just look at last year. Last year, there were less than 12,000 jobs created in the private sector in Wisconsin. You referenced incentives. We paid millions and millions and millions of dollars in incentives, but yet we still lost 3,700 manufacturing jobs in the state of Wisconsin. 3,700. And we're last 3 years in a row in terms of creating new businesses. That's not a plan. That's not leadership. We need a leader as governor that actually understands how to grow things. That's what I've done my entire career. I started a business. It was an appraisal and consulting business that I grew into an international company. We helped companies solve problems. We helped companies gain access to billions of dollars every year so they could grow and create jobs. So when it comes time to understand incentives, the kinds of things that align with the needs of the people of Wisconsin, and also inspire companies to locate here, to start businesses here, to stay here and to grow here, those are things I understand. The ability for me to have a conversation with people who are running businesses, as well as the people who are working on the factory floor, that's what I've done my whole life. And understanding, too, that when labor works together with management towards a common goal, that's how everything great is built. Those are the kinds of things that we have to get back to in the state of Wisconsin.
And I noticed in the last 24-hour news cycle, which changes so rapidly, speaking of incentives for business, Foxconn was actually offered $3 billion in incentives to come to Wisconsin. With Scott Walker offered that in a very big public way. But we do know with history that incentives for companies don't ensure that it's sustainable. That's a lot of money to offer a company that comes to Wisconsin and sets up, creates an entire building possibly. And we also know that that is something that's been offered by this corporation and they haven't delivered. So, what are your thoughts on that? So, some people are saying it's 3,000 jobs and the next news article says it's 13,000 jobs. There's a lot of numbers out there that it seemed more like a kind of a hyped PR moment more than anything. What do you think?
Well, I think that the facts about the Foxconn deal are still trickling out. So I think out of respect for whatever's happening with Foxconn, I can't say that I have all those details. So I'll address it from a little bit higher up. Anytime we can create good paying, family sustaining jobs for the state of Wisconsin, that's a good thing. If that's what's happening here with the Foxconn deal, then I give Governor Walker credit for bringing it to the state because it has the potential of being transformational for southeastern Wisconsin, but also for other areas of Wisconsin too. So let's put that over to the side now, and let's talk about specifically the incentive side. Governor Walker does not have a good track record through the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation of actually keeping track of whether or not those incentives have actually even created jobs. The use of funds, the inability to actually do the behind-the-scenes work to approve loans. Over $100 million went out without the kind of backroom review. So there's a lot of challenges when Governor Walker gets into the actual execution phase of these incentives. So again, I want to say if it's actually happening, and we'll see if it actually happens when it happens, but if it's happening, that's great. But there's a lot of there's a long distance between an agreed upon deal and the actual execution. I want to see if Foxconn actually executes. If they do execute, I want to understand what exactly are those incentives? What are they being paid for? What's the agreed upon deliverable on the part of Foxconn? What kinds of jobs specifically? What are the job descriptions? What will people be paid? What are the incentives? What are the benefits that people will be paid? And what are the incentives for those kinds of things?
And with a lot of public money up front to do this, that I would imagine that should be a very transparent thing.
It should be absolutely transparent. And Governor Walker's approach should be very businesslike, but it hasn't been to date. He makes the claim that Wisconsin is open for business, but then in his own administration, he doesn't really execute with the kind of rigor that a business would execute with. We want companies to come to Wisconsin. We want this to be a climate where people view the incredible strengths that we have as a state, but we also want to make sure that we're delivering for our taxpayers. And if taxpayers are putting upfront money to Foxconn in promise of a certain number of good-paying jobs and other economic development that is supposed to come right along with it, then let's make sure that they deliver. And there should be a mechanism by which you pay incentives based upon delivery. I look at that process completely different than Governor Walker does. What Governor Walker has done is he has pushed these incentives to corporations before they've actually been in the position or proved that they've earned them. It doesn't work that way in real life. If I was offering incentive packages to my employees, we'd sit down at the beginning of the year, we'd discuss exactly what those packages were, we would discuss the process by which they would qualify for additional bonuses, and then when they achieved or satisfied those requirements, they were paid those bonuses. And in my business, they could continue to earn bonuses based upon those kinds of achievements. We can do the same thing in the state of Wisconsin.
Do you believe?
If I may,
go ahead.
I just want to finish that. So instead of offering these incentives right up front, then why don't we prime that pump? Why don't we get companies started in the state, help them get off the ground on the kinds of things that were agreed to by our state. But then as you get close to satisfying those agreed upon requirements, then begin to pay the majority of those incentives. And when you get to 100%, pay 100%. But what if they deliver 200%? What if they deliver 300%? Then I would think if the deal was well conceived from the beginning, I'd have no problem paying 200 if they deliver 200. Let's reward success, but let's track and monitor what's actually happening to make sure that the companies are delivering on their promises, because they certainly expect the taxpayers of Wisconsin to deliver on theirs.
Well, and it's interesting because he will drug test and make sure you're trying to find a job in order to give you any sort of public assistance, but he absolutely takes that into another direction when it comes to business. And it hasn't been successful. It really hasn't. There's been a lot of failure. There have been a lot of companies that have closed and people are not working anymore. And these were companies that did, in fact, take public money to get started, incentives, as we mentioned.
Yeah, so think about that. So his approach to workforce development in the state of Wisconsin, as you said, is let's strip food away from families who need it. Let's threaten them with losing those benefits. Let's drug test families who desperately need these job opportunities. I worked in business for 35 years. I guided a lot of businesses to success, and I helped bring people together in those organizations. The way you motivate people to work is you pay them. You pay them. So the programs for workforce development that I've been talking about for the last 18 months say, well, let's approach families. Let's pay them a living wage. Let's help put them through the kinds of training programs that teach life skills and job skills that are needed not just in their community, but are needed by businesses all over the state. And when you do that, you help two different groups of people, and there's a direct benefit to taxpayers. You're helping people and to lift them out of government assistance, which is a direct benefit to taxpayers, and you're lifting the companies throughout the state of Wisconsin who desperately need workers that have the job skills needed to grow their businesses. So the whole concept that you would starve Wisconsin families and drug test them is Unacceptable. Another huge
Especially
reason
when
I'm
you
here.
take money from, he has taken campaign donations, $25,000 actually from marijuana, interested company. I mean, he has actually taken money from that interest as well. Let's move on to the budget. So the governor, to some degree, seems to be a little bit of a lame duck right now when it comes to getting the budget passed in the state. The transportation piece of it, to be exact, is what's holding it up. It seems like, and there's not agreement, and even in his own party. What does he need to do? What's the problem there? Why can't our governor lead and get this done?
Well, this is only a 30-minute show, so I can't really get into all the problems are there, but I will say simply this. What's troubling when you look at what's going on in the budget discussions is that all of the things that have to do with special interests have somehow magically gotten decided very early on in this budget process. The things that have to do with the people of the state of Wisconsin, those are the things that have been left for last. So again, you look at transportation. Transportation is a promise that that Governor Walker made when he was campaigning to be elected the first time. He said, "I'm going to come in and I'm going to fix those problems." But what has he actually done? Every time a budget proposal has come before him, it's been stonewalled. I mean, his answer is no to so many of the different plans. As a leader of our state, his job is to make a decision that's actually going to make life in the state of Wisconsin better for the people who live here. He's looked at a bunch of different plans and consistently says no. And when he does that, he makes the state of Wisconsin and everybody in it a target, because transportation infrastructure is one of the things upon which our economy grows. He goes around the state of Wisconsin and says he's making these sincere, listening tours. Well, listen to the people in northern Wisconsin. That transportation infrastructure is needed because it's really simple. If you can't get there, nobody's going there. He makes promises about internet. He's stripped money away from internet development in the past. If you can't connect there, nobody's going there. There's no sincere, real plan for economic development throughout the state of Wisconsin when you're ignoring the structure that's needed to make sure that you can build that economy, that community throughout our state. So there's, in politics, unfortunately, there's generally what you say, and then there's what you do. I think that Governor Walker needs to be measured on what he actually does, because the budget was really a clever way for him to appear much more moderate to the people who were very critical of him. But the reality is he stuck to the things that he stood for from the start. And one of those things, getting back to the people who generally most desperately need our help in the state of Wisconsin, is to go after the people who are least able to really defend themselves. That's not acceptable. We're in a position as a state with great strengths to be able to actually get people back to work and into jobs where they're able to support their families. And those are the kinds of things that will build a strong Wisconsin.
We need to go to that point that you made about, in his budget, that he seems to be offering something to people that have disagreed with him, maybe looking from some sort of olive branch, but really the education budget and what he's proposed to give money to schools, to public schools. It's been criticized. People have said it's not genuine. It's not enough. It doesn't really cover the rural areas. I'm trying to think of the number. Was it 649?
649 million.
What are your thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh. So he strips public education of $2 billion and then offers to put back in $649 million to appear more moderate. Of course, our education system is going to give him praise for having a budget that offers resources that are desperately needed by our schools. But when you've starved a system, an incredibly important system of our state, and now you're offering to throw back some bones, important bones, to try to bring resources back into our schools, of course you're going to applaud that kind of an effort. But if you think about it, it's also an acknowledgement on his part that stripping all of those resources out of our schools was a mistake, and that we have communities that are suffering as a result of it. We have schools that are closing. We have schools that are trying to figure out, how in the world do I even come up with the kind of school supplies that are needed by our kids? And most often, the teachers who have been attacked by him are the people who are bringing in those supplies out of their own pockets to make sure that the kids have what they need in the classroom to succeed. His whole approach to education is completely counter to who we are in Wisconsin.
And you actually are the only candidate that is declared for governor so far to actually really talk about reversing Act 10.
Well, what I think is incredibly important is, if you want to have a great education system, you have to have the teachers at the table. How do you make decisions about education and about making sure that public education in the state of Wisconsin is great, and exclude the people who have the most direct and important contact with students in the classroom? It defies reason. The fact that he singled out teachers and he made them responsible for the fact that he does not have a plan to grow our state, again, unacceptable. That might be the word I go to so often when I'm discussing his policies. Is just unacceptable. You don't take people who are responsible every single day for the people in our lives that are most cherished, our kids. Okay? Teachers have the responsibility of nurturing and providing the kinds of background and experience that are going to help our kids to be successful.
And they're sometimes literally parenting them in some schools.
It's incredibly difficult. And again, think about this from the perspective of the people of Wisconsin. And let's just put it in business terms. Parents, of course, want their kids to have a great education because it's the key to their future and to their success. Businesses want to locate in a place where there's a lot of smart and well-educated people to hire. And even if you don't have kids or you don't have a business, you probably own a home, and that's probably the single largest investment that you've made in your life. Well, when somebody's shopping for a home, the very first question they ask you is, how are the schools? Mm-hmm. So there's a real reason why we should be supporting our schools. Schools in our rural areas they're shutting down because people are leaving those communities because they can't find that good job. Again, young people are leaving. But what's the toll on our kids? Our kids in rural communities are riding a bus for an hour or an hour and a half to school, and then an hour or an hour and a half back. That's not what it's about. Schools in rural communities are the heartbeat of that community. Everything revolves around our schools, whether it's the sports programs or what's going on with social programs or what's happening with our kids. It's what our small communities are about and always has been. It's part of the culture of Wisconsin. The fact that we have a governor that, instead of trying to solve the problems we face in public education, would seek to privatize our schools, again, demonstrates that he's not there to solve the tough problems. He's there out of his special interest, let's just call it the way it is, special interest and his own self-interest as someone who really would like to be the president of the United States.
Other than what you've listed, obviously these teachers are bringing supplies themselves and they need resources. Those kids also need mental health resources. Their parents at home might need resources for addiction and rehabilitation. And, segue to healthcare, because to me, I always think of them together, right? You have to feel good to be at school, to really listen, to perform, to be able to, focus on what you're doing, and to let the teacher really do her job as well. But he has not been a champion when it comes to healthcare either. And with the federal level healthcare that's being debated right now, the American Health Care Act, we have healthcare that literally is going to leave us behind when it comes to Medicaid funding. As a matter of fact, I'm sure as you know, he has said he would possibly accept waivers to allow insurance companies to hike up premiums for people with pre-existing conditions. Historically, he has not accepted Medicaid expansions. And so some of these kids in these areas, they need help even before they even get out of the door to go to school. But he has not been a leader and that piece of it as well. And I'd like you just to talk about healthcare in general and what it might look like for Wisconsin in the future with the American Health Care Act being on the table?
So there's a lot baked into what you asked. And so I'm going to start on the healthcare side, and then I'm going to move back to schools. I have Crohn's disease. All right. I was diagnosed in my 20s, my early 20s with Crohn's disease. So I'm a person who actually has had to list myself as someone with a pre-existing condition for most of my life. My entire family, so my wife of 27 years, my kids who are 9 and 13, we're on Obamacare. We're one of those families who recognizes that there is great risk if what Republican lawmakers are trying to do right now, which is strip over 20 million Americans of a program that offers affordable health care. It certainly isn't who we are as a country. It certainly is going to impact people throughout the state of Wisconsin, hundreds of thousands of people in the state of Wisconsin. I was just at an event a couple days ago where I asked the group to just simply raise their hand if they had a pre-existing condition. Nearly every single person in the room raised their hand. And the people who didn't, I'm sure I'd get 100% if I just said, do you know somebody that does? Healthcare is a right. If I'm elected governor, I will make sure that the people of the state of Wisconsin, everybody in the state of Wisconsin, has affordable access to healthcare, period.
Would you accept those waivers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The fact that they weren't accepted and what that did was have an impact again on the people in our state who most need that help is part of what our governor has demonstrated his policies are all about. That's not who we are in the state of Wisconsin. That's not the kind of governor that I'll be. And healthcare is obviously very dear to me and to my family, but it's incredibly important to the people of
Especially
our
because
state.
these families, some of these people, they need help to be able to go to work. They need to feel better to go to work. They need to feel better to even be parents to these children who then go to school. And it's really the beginning point of everything, whether it's education or business or making the economy work for Wisconsin people. I believe that that's something that is not connecting as much as it needs to be. That we do need to feel good in order to go to work and school to perform.
No question. So in my business, it was important to me that people were paid fairly, that they were treated equally, that they had affordable health care. We, of course, had all kinds of policies. So you talk about family leave. Our policy on family leave was, if your family needs you, leave, okay? Because that's what you do. That's what you do in a business to be successful. You treat the people that you work with like family. To be a governor, to deny Medicaid expansion, which puts all kinds of people at risk. And also, if we think about it as a state, some of these decisions may very well end up being before the governor of the state of Wisconsin. That governor better be someone who is going to put the people first and not the politics first. We already know the decision that Governor Walker is going to make if he's the person sitting at that desk. If I'm that person at that desk, I will put people first. Now, I want to move back to your question about schools. It's also interesting that when you talk to people who believe in the Republican policies, let me put it a different way. I understand why Democrats don't like Governor Walker. It's really hard for me to understand why Republicans do. Republicans believe in smaller government, right? But what Governor Walker has consistently done is consolidated power to Madison, consolidated power to himself. What I would do on the school side is I would return more local control. The issues that you described earlier about some of the challenges that are going on with different schools are best known by the schools and the school districts themselves. The budgets that we put together on a statewide basis should have some flexibility so that on a local basis, schools are able to identify the kinds of things that they need to be doing to address some of the very real concerns about not just public education, but safety in our schools. And
Yeah, and
who-
can I say this too? Because I know there are people that are going to be watching, listening, that are in the Green Bay area for sure. We recently have a situation at our Washington Middle School in the city of Green Bay. And this is a very big topic around here about safety in schools and what needs to be done. And so, is it what you're saying is that having a blanket, the money goes out there and it just goes to this. Every school has different needs. Maybe it's really taking a look at schools like that they need it in a different way.
it's critical. Nothing in life is one size fits all. Different schools have different challenges. The middle school here in Green Bay has different challenges. Now, I don't claim to have a detailed understanding of everything that's going on, but when you look statewide at some of the issues that we're facing here in Green Bay, in Milwaukee, in all other school districts around our state, the teachers, school boards, administrators, stakeholders in the community have to be able to have more ability to address the needs of the school system on the ground. And you do that by saying, okay, listen, if there's a state budget and a state structure for schools and budgeting, allow that flexibility so that if a particular school has more needs that are along these lines versus those lines, then let that budget be able to address it in a way that we're taking best care of the kids for whom we're trying to teach. It's not that complicated, but you have to restore that local control so that people who understand those issues are able to address them. And I think that's true in Green Bay as well.
It's absolutely true, because I do feel one of the biggest complaints has been that there really isn't a lot of local control, that is hamstrung to some degree, and that it's being volleyed around whose fault it is and what to do about it. And to some degree, that's exactly the problem. So we're going to wrap up with a question that a lot of people have. They knew I was interviewing you, and one of the, I would say the most. The question that came up the most was the Democratic Party is somewhat fractured, especially after the last election cycle. We need people to come out and vote more than ever before. And, there's a lot of candidates that are coming to the table to be governor. What can you do to get these people back, to make us unify and really understand what's at stake?
So one of the things I talk about all the time is that as Democrats, as people who have progressive values, the reason that we're here is because we care deeply about people and we want to make their lives better. That's the simple message. When you look at the things that we care about, I describe it as a fireworks display. There's a million lights in the sky, and they're all really, really important. But we need to pull ourselves right back down to that base and recognize that no matter which of those issues is your issue, the one that you're most passionate about, bring it back down to the fact that we're all here because we care deeply about people. We need to make that connection with the voters of Wisconsin so that they recognize that we have a real plan that's going to make their life better. A simple plan that describes how we're going to create good-paying jobs throughout our state. I've been talking about that for 18 months. I've been listening to people to inform those plans. People who are living in poverty, people who are milking cows, people who are running businesses, making butter, processing vegetables, running power companies. I've been talking to people who have helped to fund early childhood education, and I've talked to kids who are involved in those programs. Everybody and anybody that could inform a very real way out. That's what I'm about. That's the conversation we need to have in this state, because it's possible in the state of Wisconsin to create jobs in science, technology, manufacturing, and agriculture. That's who we are as a state. And you do that by focusing on the things that we're already good at. We're great at food. We have a great freshwater initiative, air, energy, the kinds of things that support life. If we're driving the technologies and applications, literally leading the world in those kinds of things, we create all those jobs. And we're selling our products not just to companies throughout our state that need them, not just throughout the United States, but throughout the world. We become the global leader that's actually driving the kinds of things that support life. We don't have to strive to be the next Silicon Valley. That's not who we are. We're Wisconsin. Let's just stick with our roots. Let's build on our strengths. And when we do that, we'll reconnect with voters who simply want us to know, hey, I'm struggling. Are you hearing me? I'm struggling. I'm working 2 or 3 jobs. I'm never home. I don't see my kids. I don't even think about going on a vacation. And I want to know that you've got my back. Well, I've got your back. We'll put in place programs that put people first, that create good jobs, that get back to great education, that make sure that people have affordable health care. It'll be about the people, not about the politics. That's why I'm here.
And is there anything else you want to say as far as getting in touch with you? You have a website you can share, Facebook page?
Sure. My website is andygronik.com. It's Andy, A-N-D-Y. Last name is spelled Gronik, Gronik.com. Check out our website. Also, follow us on social media. I just declared about 2 weeks ago, we've blown up on social media. People are hungry to have a different kind of an approach to actually getting back to the things that we're all about in Wisconsin. So follow us on Facebook, jump on Twitter, just get involved. And most importantly, we have a button on our website that allows you to share your voice. This is about starting that conversation, restoring the voice of government to the people. That's where it's supposed to be. So if you have ideas that you feel will help to make life better in our state for everyone, share your voice, because every single one of those ideas comes past me.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. I know you're busy.
Thank you. This was really delightful. Thanks.
That wraps up Political Radar Pulse episode 18. For show notes, go to politicalradarpulse.com/18. If you are watching this episode on YouTube, like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to get notifications. And if you would like to support this show, you can like this show on Facebook and Twitter, and you can buy shirts and other merchandise at politicalradar.com/shop. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for watching Political Radar Pulse. To ensure that you'll never miss an episode, subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. To check out more episodes of Political Radar Pulse, visit politicalradarpulse.com or connect with us on Facebook or Twitter.